Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I made 3 Christmas cards. Each of these Christmas cards are going to use a Christmas tree as their main embellishment. I'm going to create a background for my first card and I'm going to use this Craft Merry Christmas stamp. The sort of inverted shaped pear Christmas ornament is going to be the stamp that I use. I use my powder pack to cover the whole of the area that I want to stamp, and then I'm going to stamp with Versamark embossing ink and then emboss with gold embossing powder. I'm going to stamp this a number of times so that I've got basically an all over cover of the baubles. All 3 of the cards in this video use a white 5 1/4 inch square card base. So I cut my white card to 10.5 inches, score at 5 1/4 and then fold along my score mark. This gives me a 5 1/4 inch square card. I don't know why I use this size, but I just like the size, and I seem to be making 90% of my cards in this size. I'm using my Caterpillar Pro trimmer today because I've left my other one at my daughter's place, so I have to move this bigger trimmer in and out as I'm making my cuts. So I'm going to trim that piece I've just created down so that it's 5 inches square. To create the Christmas tree for this card, I'm going to use a die that cuts 4 layers for a Christmas tree, and I'm going to use the BoBunny Father Christmas paper range to do that. Once I've cut my 4 layers, I'm going to ink around the edge with my black ink cube. I have also cut a pot for the Christmas tree to sit in out of that gold mirror card. When all of my pieces are ready, I use my art glitter glue to attach each of them to the card front, or the panel that I made earlier. I'm going to start with the bottom layer and work my way up to the top, just adjusting them so that they fit nicely on the card. Time now to ink around the edge of my panel and attach it to the front of my card base. I use double-sided tape to do this. I'm going to use this small punch and the gold mirror card to punch a star for the top of my Christmas tree. The sentiment for this card comes from Uniquely Creative. It's in one of those pre-printed sheets. I think you can actually foil these as well if you want to. But anyway, I'm just going to trim it down to size, and then I'm going to mat it on some of the same gold mirror card that I've used for the star and the pot that this Christmas tree sits in. I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach that sentiment to the gold cardstock, and then I'm going to add a bit of chipboard to the back of that before I attach it to my card. To give my tree a little touch of extra sparkle, I'm going to use this Pops of Colour in Glittering Champagne and just add little dobs of it all over the Christmas tree to look like baubles on the tree. This also adds some dimension to the front of my card. I had this little bit of the cardstock that I made for the front of the card left over. It's just under 1 inch wide, so I trimmed it down to 5 1/4 inches long and inked around the edge of it and stuck it on the inside of my card on the left hand edge. And that completes our first card. The second card is white and gold. I think white and gold cards just look so elegant. I trimmed, once again using a 5 1/4 inch card base, and I trimmed a piece of white cardstock down to 5 inches square. I also had a bit of an offcut there, so I decided to trim that down as well, and I ended up with a piece that was about 2.5 inches by about 4 3/4 inches. My plan was to use this Sizzix 3D Textured Impressions embossing folder called Mosaic Gems, but when I ran that through my Big Shot, it wasn't wide enough to cover the whole of the 5 inch square piece, so I trimmed it down and I ended up with a piece that was 4.5 inches square. I really do need to get some embossing folders that have bigger areas of embossing, so that can do a proper square of about 5 inches. So because I had to trim that down, I decided to put a gold mat behind it, and I cut a piece of the same mirror card that I used on the previous card, and I cut that down to 4 3/4 inches square. So I'm going to put the gold, and then I'm going to put my embossed piece in on top of that. I'm using some gold ribbon from my stash, and I'm going to tie that around that piece of 4 3/4 inches, I think it was, piece of white cardstock that I cut previously. I'm using double-sided tape around the back so that the ribbon is held firmly in place, and I'm going to bring it around to the front. I do use some double-sided tape on the front as well, and then I just tie a knot. I use my reverse tweezers to hold the ribbon in place. I want both ends of the ribbon to point down towards the bottom of the card, so once I've trimmed it to the right length, I put a dab of glue on the card base and then use the tweezers to hold that ribbon in place while the glue dries. Time now to attach my embossed piece of cardstock and my gold cardstock to the front of my card base. I'm going to use the art glitter glue to do that. Before I attach my panel that's got the ribbon wrapped around it, I add some scrap chipboard to the back of it so that it stands a little proud of the front of the card. I'm going to use this die, well, 2 of the dies and some white cardstock, and cut 2 Christmas trees out for this card. Then I'm going to use my glue and back each of those Christmas trees with some of the gold mirror card. All I do for this is just run a bead of glue around the outside edge of the Christmas trees, attach them to the mirror card, and then use my scissors to trim around the edge. Time now to attach my trees to my panel, and then attach the panel to the card base. The greeting for this card is once again from one of those uniquely creative packs, and I have actually foiled this one. I'm going to mat that onto some of the gold mirror card and then attach that to the front of my card using foam tape. And there we have our second card featuring Christmas trees. Card number 3. I started off with this frame that I've had sitting on my desk for ages and I've wanted to use, so I'm going to use it for this card. Now I drew around the inside and the outside of the frame because I want to create a backing for the frame. Once again, I'm going to use this BoBunny Father Christmas paper range. I've had it in my stash for quite a few years, and I want to start using these things up. So I've chosen this striped pattern paper because it gives me an assortment of colours, and I'm just cutting strips from it. I'm not sticking to a particular width of the strips, I'm just cutting them as I see fit. Once I've got enough strips, I start layering them on the inside, so staying within the inside line that I drew around my frame, in a descending size so that they are wider at the bottom and smaller on the top to create my Christmas tree for the front of this card. I used my Tim Holtz distress tool to distress the edges of each of those little strips, and then I used my black ink cube to go around the edge of each of those strips to give it that distressed, aged look. Time now to attach my strips to my white cardstock, being sure to make sure that I stay within the bounds of that inside frame that I drew with my pencil. I used a piece of scrap paper just to create a little pot for my Christmas tree to sit in. I used the same 1/2 inch star punch and the gold mirror card to create the star for the top of my tree. Time now to add my frame, so I use my art glitter glue and stick the frame back on top of the pencil lines that I drew previously. I used my scissors to trim around the frame, and then I used my black ink cube to ink around the edge to just finish it off. Okay, time to create my layers for the front of my card now. I cut one piece of pattern paper 4 3/4 inches square, a piece of the gold mirror card 5 inches square, and another piece of pattern paper 5 1/4 inches square, because I'm going to cover the complete front of this card. I distress and ink the edges of each of these pieces. Then I use my art glitter glue to attach all of those layers to the front of my card base. For the inside of the card, I cut a piece of the pattern paper, which was actually a scrap, to 1 3/4 inches by 4 3/4, and a piece of the gold card 2 inches by 5 inches. I distressed and inked the edges of both of those, layered the pattern paper on top of the gold, and then attached that to the inside of the card on the right hand edge of the back panel. I wasn't happy with the white background behind the Christmas tree. It was too stark, so I've got a set of Semco pearlized watercolours, so I'm using those and a green to fill in the back of the back of the frame, I suppose, so that it's green around the Christmas tree. To give the frame a bit of sparkle, I've used a Wink of Stella pen, and this one's called White. So I've just given the whole frame a coat with that. I've used my Elizabeth Craft Designs 743 Merry Christmas die to cut from gold mirror card my sentiment, and I'm going to now use my art glitter glue to attach that to my Christmas tree. So that's it for the third card. There will be some stills and close-ups at the end of the video, so stick around for those. Thank you for joining me here today for my video. I hope you can join me for my next video. If you're not a subscriber, I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell next to the subscribe button so that you're notified each time I upload a new video. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you can join me for my next video.